I'm Chelsea June from Twin Flames, and we wanted to share a really exciting adventure that we had this past summer. We got to go to the Torngats Mountains in Nunatsiavut, Labrador, and the adventures that we had one after another were something that we couldn't simply keep for ourselves.
Hi, I'm Yves from Twin Flames. By far, I think for me, that trip that we had was probably the most fun we've had. We got to experience so many different things and got to meet so many great people. So that trip by far, I think it's still in my head, dancing. We took off from Montreal on a 737, and we landed in Kuujjuaq. And we hopped on a Twin Otter to go to Camp Staff, which is George River in English. It's on the northern Ungava side. And from there we hopped on a King Air. At the end of the day, when we were flying, the captain warned us of turbulence, and that got very shaky. And I know Chelsea was going green a bit, but. We were having a nice conversation with one of the elders whom I happen to have kind of grew up around. Sophie Keelan is her name, and she was telling us stories of how it used to be back then, where the Torngats Mountains are situated. They're part of the Appalachian Trail, and they're huge, immense mountains, and it was just crazy just to see them again, and it seems like every time you see them, it's like for the first time again, and to hear the stories of people having trekked that via dog team or by foot, it was unimaginable.
Like the jading of the cliffs, like it's just these straight drops, and I'm sitting in this tiny airplane and I'm just like, oh my God, where are we going? Like, this is just, you're really in the middle of nowhere, and just flying in general, I'm still not 100% with, but flying over peaks and cliffs, like, just make the height seem so much more real. And just that vast landscape, though, it was like nothing I'd ever seen in my entire life. So as much as I was kind of feeling sick just to my stomach, I was enjoying the scenery at the same time, just trying to push past that fear. And I think that this trip was all about that, was pushing the boundaries on fear and just enjoying the moment. So they specifically said to bring, really warm gear, and here I am forgetting the most important piece of clothing. So yeah, he was kind enough to lend me his jacket, and I think day one I was wearing 5 sweaters, an undershirt, one of my jackets, his jacket, a toque, hoods, multiple hoods, whatever I could find to just try and stay warm. Here we are, first day on base camp. It's pretty cold today. A lot of fog, rain, waves. It's windy. So day one we arrive and we get to base camp. And they explain the 10,000 volt polar bear fence that's surrounding us. And they show us a little small orange tent that's flapping in the wind and explain that that's where we're going to be sleeping. I don't know, mentally not having a barrier between myself and the bear, I think was just like playing over and over again in my mind before going to bed. And like every time there was like anything that would move outside or any kind of wind, we ended up in a fiberglass green igloo, which was really cool. It was an exciting day because we were being flown by chopper to Hebron, and that was a really special place for both of us to have visited because we wrote a song called Isuma for a man that was taken from his home, which was Hebron, and never got to return. So the fact that we got to go there and step foot on those almost sacred grounds, they did feel like a very sacred place when we landed there. It's like, Torngat means spirits, and it felt like spirits were with us that entire trip. In 1959, the Canadian government went into Hebron, and from the stories from Sophie the elder, they literally gave them 8 hours to pack whatever they could and relocated everybody from Hebron to different places. So families were split up. They had no clue where they were being brought. They weren't told anything, just that they had to move because the federal government was no longer going to be supplying food or anything to that village. So that kind of sets the mindset. The Moravians from Germany are the ones that came over to Hebron and built a big church, and it was also a center, a hospital, where everyone lived in this one big building. So the Inuit were kind of forced into this religion to a certain sense, and the traditional drum dancing and the traditional throat singing were banned because they were seen as something evil or the devil's work.
When we were in Hebron, we had a personal tour from Johnny, one of the elders, and it was such an eerie feeling to go through the building, the attic, and he had a story for each room that we visited. Everything was so vivid, but it was very interesting and, again, eerie. So as I had mentioned earlier, where you went from 2 degrees to 30 degrees, we went on this trek. We got choppered into North Arm, which is breathtaking. It's almost as if you get transported to Lake Louise or something like that in Alberta. And when we got there, the weather just kept changing and changing. We were probably about 40 people on that trail, and we had bear monitors on each section, making sure that nobody goes offline and get eaten by Yogi. And it was so hot that obviously there was some people that decided to go swimming. I stripped down to my Captain Americas and I jumped in. As I jumped in, we're there, and 2 minutes later there's a commotion, and there's a black bear watching over us while we're swimming. It's almost as honestly I felt like soup, the meat on the soup, being looked at. It was such a funny feeling, but it was just staying there watching us, and but we kept an eye on it. Everybody kept an eye on it, and it was very refreshing. It's one of those things, you don't think, you just do before you think, and you pay for it afterwards. But at the end of the day, I felt really good after that. Like the energy that I had after was great.
After our beautiful adventure in the North Arm, we were invited to take the C3, which is the Canada Coast to Coast to Coast initiative boat. And their main initiative was reconciliation. So for us to have gone on board, it was really special. Not too many Canadians got to have that experience. So they were actually going from the North Arm to visit base camp, which was where we were staying, and they were spending the night overnight there with us. So they had invited us to take the boat back to base camp, which was about a 5-hour boat ride, and we had a lot of fun. We jammed, we met people that were on the boat, and there were a lot of really interesting people on board, and great music sharing circles, and just a good time of human relationships. I think in our busy lives sometimes it's tough to make those connections, so just having a time out, this trip was a definite time out for those types of things to happen, and to have conversations with meaning, and just in depth getting to know other people, which was really awesome. Fast forward to the next day was concert day, and that's what we were brought up for, was to do the first ever concert at Rama Bay. And all of that was a vision that came to Mike Stevens, who is this incredibly talented harmonica player, and I truly believe his music comes from another place. And so Mike has synesthesia, and so he sees music in lights, colors, and patterns. And when he visited Rama Bay a few years prior, he was able to see that Rama Bay is a natural amphitheater, and how the sound carries, and how even the ocean is in a key of music. And so it was his vision to one day have a concert in Rama Bay, and the fact that we got to be a part of it was just like next level. It was so incredible. Like when we landed there with the helicopter, like my heart. Like, you couldn't ask for better scenery, and the weather held up for us. We had a beautiful day. To the left of the stage was this beautiful waterfall, and then the whole front of the stage was the ocean with these two massive icebergs and these mountains everywhere, and
minke whales popping up here and there. It was like, wow. I mean, even if we didn't have an audience, we were just playing for nature, and the generators out behind the amphitheater, so it doesn't affect the sound. The crew from the Saglek Bay had come in the night before and made us a temporary stage, and it was such a great experience.
It's like there were so many collaborations happening, and they were so natural, and it was like the spirits were there. Like, the spirit of the Torngats was happy to hear traditional and non-traditional music being played, and I guess nature sang with us in that moment.
Right after our performances, we got choppered out onto the top of the hill, which was this bowl, this natural quarry, these rocks that you've never seen anywhere else.
Yeah.
Shards, and it was just really weird feeling. Like the wind, there was no wind. There was it felt like we were baking in there, because the texture and the color was darker, and but everything, the fact that it's a national park, everybody told us to not touch anything. We couldn't even lift a rock. We couldn't displace anything. It was so. You had to be really careful. It was crazy. A couple of days after seeing a clip of musicians that we knew that had been there, and we were saying, we should have been there. We have to be there. How can we get this? 2 or 3 days later, we get this email from Gary Baikie from the parks, and he said, how would you guys like to go to Torngats Mountains? And I was like, yeah. Name the date, and yeah, so thank you so much to the whole crew that was there. Mike Stevens and Charlie Cheffens, Sophie and Johnny, for giving us their insight on their childhood.
Yeah, and the kitchen staff for making us gain like 15 pounds that week. I've never eaten so much in my life, but it was amazing food.
For us to have gone to the Torngats Mountains, very spiritual.
Having stepped foot on such an ancient ground that's been untouched by mankind, something that's still so pure, was something extremely spiritual for myself. I felt connected in a way that I hadn't in a long time, and I think it reminded me that nature in its truest form does not need to be altered, and mankind comes in and does a lot of damage. So to see Torngat still the way that it is, being protected by the national parks, is something that's incredibly important, and I hope to go back, and when I do go back, I hope that it stays the same, because it's a treasure and it's a spirit, and it refills our spirits as human beings when we return to places like that. So we'd like to thank Parks Canada for making this trip of a lifetime a reality.